1.18.
But must not look at the paper.
You can be looking right now.
Okay. We're going to start our press conference. My name is Pascal Muhanji. I'm an economist at CSBAG. So today's press statement is a response to the approved budget estimates. We are aware that in May the budget was approved in Parliament, and next week on 12th we're going to have the budget reading by Minister of Finance. And our statement today is responding to that approved budget, giving our CSO perspectives, what we think has been done right, but also what we think should have been done better, giving highlights of the financing of the budget, where the money will come from, how the money will be spent, on which sectors, and basically that's what we are going to talk about. So we are going to start. I hope you're ready and learning. And these are the CSO perspectives. Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group has organized civil society organizations under the umbrella group, which is CSBAG, that are gathered here to share their perspectives on the approved budget for the financial year 25-26, which is going to start on 1st July. We know that this budget was tabled in Parliament and approved, and next week we are going to have it read. After the reading, we expect towards the end of the month, the President will send East and to become a law and become the new financial year's budget. We recognize that the financial year 25-26 is an important year, as it is the first year of the implementation of the National Development Plan 4, as well as the first year of the new government after the 2026 general elections. So this budget is going to be the first budget in the implementation of the NDP4, but after next year when we have the general elections, it is also going to be the first budget in the new government. So it is very key and a critical budget. We appreciate government for the progressive tax reforms as contained in the financial year 25-26 tax bills approved by Parliament. I will specifically recommend government on the following. One, aimed at boosting entrepreneurship and supporting growth of startups in Uganda. We are aware that the income tax amendment number 2 cap 338/2025 will provide for exemption of startup businesses established by citizens for the first 3 years. And our colleagues, we think this is very important, because when you look at the statistics, we know that the startups in Uganda most of them die in the first year, and most of them never see their 5th birthday. So this innovation of giving them a tax break for 3 years is very important for ensuring that they grow. And it's also going to be very important when we have these startups growing, then we can have higher tax revenue later. We also commend the government especially through the central bank, for able keeping inflation within the medium target of 5% and exchange rates within target. As we head into the election period, we are hopeful that the central bank will contain any inflationary pressures and keep the macroeconomic environment stable. Yeah, much as we appreciate the government that the inflation target and the exchange rate target is within the target of 5% for inflation, we are aware of the risks that are coming in the next year as we head into the election period. We know it comes with a lot of spending, and a lot of spending normally tends to put pressures on inflation. But we are hopeful that the central bank will make sure that the inflation target is going to remain within the medium framework target of 5%, and the effect of the extra spending that will come with the election year will be contained. We also commend the government for the approval of the PIMS policy, that is Public Investment Management Policy, which puts safeguards to ensure value for money in all government investment projects, reduce losses from project implementation and irregularities. Colleagues, you know the challenge we've been facing with different projects, but now government has come up with a new policy, which is the Public Investment Management Policy, that is going to put safeguards to ensure that the projects that we have are properly implemented and we don't have losses that spill over from poor implementation of projects. Before the PIMS policy, we were having losses coming from poor implementation of projects, and we know that the external debt stock that has not been disbursed has increased from 31 3.1 billion US dollars in 2023 to 3.6 billion US dollars in the current year. And this affects service delivery. When you have a lot of money that is not being disbursed, is accruing interest, basically because the project has not kicked off. That is a huge risk to the government, but also to the taxpayer. Colleagues, throughout the 2025-2026 budget process, the CSOs have complemented government work. Right from August, we are participating in this budget process with Ministry of Finance, Parliament, local governments, and we put forward proposals. And we are happy that at the end of this budget process, we are seeing some of the proposals that have been put forward by CSOs being taken up. For example, we know that government adopted 47% of our recommendations, with more adopted registered development plan implementation program, 71% followed by agro-industrialization program at 66%, then regional balanced development at 60%, tourism and trade industry at 57%. So among the proposals that we put forward for government to adopt, this is how government has responded to our proposals, which we think is very key for government to listen to the citizens represented by CSOs with their proposals, and they are adopted into the budget.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Uganda Debt Network, our usual concern has always been prudent debt management, and to the extent to which the upcoming budget deals with that issue is of a key interest, and for that matter I will touch basically those areas, some of which have been highlighted by my colleague, but I repeat, there are about 4 or 5. I'll talk about the persistently increasing debt, the burn rate of the debt that we incur, our absorption capacity, and then the issue of our capacity to raise resources domestically in order to enhance the budget. One, there has always been persistent increment in debt. Our debt contraction trend has always been on the increase. At no point have we got a constant or a dipping. It has always been moving up and towards the ratio, the threshold ratio that we would have preferred, the 50% of GDP. And now clearly even government is indicating that in the coming financial year we are way exceeding 50% GDP ratio, and we are reaching 53% GDP ratio. We expect this budget, out of the 72 trillion shillings budgeted for, of that, as he has indicated, 34.82 trillion is going to be out of debt. We are going to get debt to acquire loans in order to service the budget, which is 53%. So that is of our concern, that you are budgeting while relying on other sources, and of the rest, of course, will be domestically mobilized. According to the projections, we will immediately note that we have a debt currently of around 107 trillion. If we compare that with our current population of 45 million people, each person is owing, each Ugandan is owing around 2.3 million. If we are to clear the debt completely and become debt-free. So if you say debt per capita, currently it is at 2.3 million, including the person in the village and one of the rich people, say Sudil. If each of those is to pay just 2.3 million, that's when we would. And yet you know very well that there are more than 50% of Ugandans who have never touched 100,000 in a whole year. So that's the bad situation in which we are, meaning that we are moving towards incapacity to service our debt. Uganda is expected to allocate 25.4% on its projected revenue to interest rate payment, which is double the benchmark of 12% set in the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility. In other words, we had committed ourselves and expected that the maximum amount of percentage on the debt servicing would be 12, but we have doubled it, even according to the budget that is coming. Fiscal indiscipline is another issue that we have recurrently talked about. That there have been always leakages, and even the government institution, the Auditor General's office, has always indicated, for example, that whereas 20 local governments, for example, we are giving a typical example. Out of the 20 local governments which received 164 billion through supplementary budget, only 119 of these had been approved by the respective local councils. Additionally, 38 local governments received 131 billion, and out of that, out of that, 233 was in supplementary funding, which was not requested for by the respective accounting officers. So sometimes we budget, then we put supplementary budget requests and other things, so there is inconsistency. Then another concern is about government's failure to absorb supplementary allocations effectively. Again, the Auditor General indicates that in the last six years, for example, 17 trillion remained unspent. We made a request for supplementary, but out of that, 17 trillion was unspent.
I want to speak to two areas that are very critical to the economy: the area of education and the area of health. Actually, if we don't have health and education, none of us could be here today, because we are partly here because we went to school, and partly because we are able to come here because we are healthy. So those are the two areas I want to speak to in relation to the approved budget and how has the budget financed those areas. So the first issue we see, especially for the health sector, is the declining allocation to procurement of essential medicines and the national medical stores. Our colleagues, you know the challenges that we all go through, especially when we go to public hospitals to access medical care, especially medicine. But in the next year's budget, we are seeing the allocations for procurement of essential medicines under Uganda national medical stores are declining. The overall budget for the allocation to NMS, which is national medical stores, has slightly decreased from 721 billion in the current financial year 24-25 to 717 billion in the approved budget for 25-26. We all know that national medical stores plays a critical role in procuring, storing, and distributing essential medicines and medical supplies for all public health facilities in the country. The decline in financing for this entity is detrimental, as it comes at a time when Uganda is grappling with declining donor support. We all know what is happening in the development world with donor support. We saw some major donors cutting aid, the issues of USAID, with other donors cutting aid. So with those donors cutting aid, then we see also government cutting the financing for essential medicines. I think that is controversial. We should be seeing government increasing the money allocating to essential medicines. To be specific, for the financial year 25-26, the budget for the anti-malaria medicines has declined from 4.6 billion to 4.6 billion from 4.75 billion. Uganda is one of the most common diseases in Uganda or in tropical Africa is malaria. But we are seeing the allocations to anti-malarials declining from 4.75 billion to 4.69 billion, which should be an issue of concern. Reproductive health supplies, their budget is going to decline from Uganda shillings 32.5 billion to 32.15 billion. And the funding for essential medical health supplies to national referral hospitals has declined to Uganda shillings 25.6 billion from Uganda shillings 25.9 billion. According to the Ministry of Health's National Integrated Qualification for struggles with funding gaps in the provision of social medical supplies to the population of Uganda by about 478 million US dollars, and this is an increase of 32%. So colleagues, with the challenges we are seeing in the health sector, when you check social media, you see cries of people that have either gone to health center 2, health center 3, a referral hospital, and they are not able to get medicines. But now in the next budget, at the background of donors cutting funding, we are seeing that the money going to social medicine, especially malaria, is declining, which should be an issue of concern. We should be seeing government allocating more funds to fund healthcare, because that is a critical sector that affects every Ugandan. We are also seeing declining financing for Ministry of Education and Sports. As I said, I was going to speak about two areas, education and health. We know that the Ministry of Education is the one that is in charge of education policy in Uganda, but also issues like education inspection. We appreciate the government's targeted allocation to some of the areas in the education sector, including the 244 billion allocated to towards Uganda Secondary School Expansion Project, Phase 2, 12 billion for the development of primary schools project, 54 billion towards the funding of vocational project Phase 2, 7 billion for Uganda National Examinations Board infrastructure. We have also observed increased funding for special needs education under Ministry of Education and Sports from 2.5 billion to 4.7 billion. This is key because the funding for special needs education is key. When you got some districts that are disability prone, you find that the children that have disabilities are not going to school. So you are seeing an increase of funding going to special needs education, which is going to help those people that have disabilities to go back to school. However, we are concerned that the general allocation to the Ministry of Education is projected to decline from Uganda shillings 9.8 billion from 853 billion in the current financial year to 843 billion in the next financial year. The departments heavily affected by this decline are basic and secondary education. Basic is where primary is, basic education. We should get a budget decrease of 97.6 billion. And the Department of Technical Vocational Education and Training, we should have a budget decrease of 78.7 trillion. These are very key departments because the Department for Basic Education is where we all started from. Basic education is where everyone starts from, primary, pre-primary and secondary. Now, when you cut that budget, then you're affecting especially the vulnerable communities that are going to those UPE schools. When you cut the budget for vocational training, we all know that those people that get challenges at the end of P7, end of senior 4, they normally go for vocational training. So when you cut that budget, then you're affecting that group that maybe has failed transition from primary 7 to secondary, or maybe from senior 4 to senior 5, and they want now to venture into vocational training.
My name is Oscod Mark Otile, and I work with Accord as a researcher. And I'm going to address myself to local government financing. As you're all aware, that in 1992, Uganda adopted decentralization by devolution as a form of governance with the intention to bring services closer or bring governance closer to the people of Uganda. And since then, we have not seen government align itself as far as budget allocation is concerned to this dream that Ugandans had in 1992. Going to the gist of the matter, as CSOs, we observe an increase from shillings 5.468 trillion from the financial year 2023-2024 to Uganda shillings 5.973 trillion in the financial year 2024-2025. But despite this increase, the budget allocations to local governments, we observe, have stagnated to around 5 trillion shillings in the last 3 years, which is a point of concern. It's also concerning that the focal points of implementation where local individuals encounter service delivery are facing yet another reduction of 6.7%, which translates into 5.73 trillion shillings. We think this reduction is likely to affect service delivery in local governments. Now, as you may all know, that most of our local governments depend heavily on central government transfers. The local revenue that they collect in local governments is not sufficient enough to address service delivery gaps. Imagine if today it rained with a lot of storm and the storm took away a roof of a classroom block of a school. Very few local governments would be able to respond to this service delivery gap. So this sort of reduction in allocation, we believe, does not clearly demonstrate the potential of local governments or does not demonstrate the potential of the implementation of the decentralization policy in this country. We therefore implore the government of Uganda to reconsider and prioritize, given that the increase in the budget is not proportionate to local government allocations, which has only received 7.7%, translating to Uganda shillings. I mean, they have only received 7.7% of the 72.37 trillion shillings, which is our national budget. We think that government should be putting money where there are many mouths. I guess that all of us in this room comes from a local government. How many of us have been born in the cities here? So all the issues that my colleagues addressed themselves to earlier, to do with access to quality education services, access to health services, these are all services that were decentralized to local governments under section and the second schedule of the Local Governments Act, and that includes education, health, agricultural services, water and sanitation, roads, amongst others. Today, when you go to some of our local governments, particularly I want to draw our attention to Karamoja sub-region. There's an interesting sub-county that has been a focus of NTV recently. That is the sub-county of Timu, Morungole, as well as Kamyon in Kabong district local government, where they have been highlighting some of these challenges. In Timu sub-county, for example, this is the Ik county where the Ik indigenous communities live. These people were displaced in the 1960s when government was creating Kidepo National Park. So they find themselves in these sub-counties whose land is mostly forest land. So you can imagine a whole sub-county having only 2 community-owned primary schools. There is no single government-owned or government-aided primary school in such a sub-county. And these schools we are talking about is only up to primary 4 level. That means once a child has completed primary 4, they have actually arrived. So, and we are looking at how to develop and balance the regions. You still speaking about Karamoja, you will find that while government is in the process of phasing out health center 2s, in Karamoja we still have 89 health center 2s. So while in other parts of the country, some of the health center 2s are being upgraded to the level of health center 3s, in Karamoja you find that most of these health center 2s, which I know that most of us know only provide first aid services, is really denying citizens of Uganda access to quality health services. So it is critical. We recommend that in the near future, government should move from this single-digit allocation to where there are many mouths to double digits, maybe to around 13% or 15%, because currently, as we speak, there are 135 districts and 10 regional cities, with 5 more to come probably before the 2026 general elections. That takes us to about currently 145 local governments, with 5 more coming. That could be about 150 local governments. So I think in the spirit of 1992, when we adopted the decentralization policy, government should honor this commitment and allocate more resources to local governments in order to improve service delivery. Thank you.